This is the supra-reality protocol, the forbidden knowledge of the 33rd degree reality, the realm where the laws above the law of attraction quietly operate. You'll soon understand why your desires never held the real power. Your commanded identity did. Today, you step into the truth that above attraction lies command, and creation begins from within. The supra-reality protocol. You didn't arrive here by accident. Certain pages find certain souls. If this book found you, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. I'm giving away a free physical copy of this book, packed with ancient wisdom and timeless insight. The details are in the pinned comment, so don't forget to check it out. Introduction. In the realm of personal transformation, there exists a profound truth that transcends conventional understanding of manifestation. Your journey begins with a radical revelation. Reality is not a passive landscape, waiting to be painted by scattered thoughts or fleeting emotions, but a dynamic canvas that responds to the fundamental essence of your being. The law of attraction, often misunderstood as a simple mechanism of desire and visualization, reveals itself as a deeper principle of energetic resonance. Yet beyond vibration lies an even more powerful domain, the realm of inner authority. This is the supra-reality, not a distant mystical plane, but the core consciousness from which your entire life experience is orchestrated. Imagine your existence as a multi-layered symphony. Most people play at the surface level, creating melodies of wishful thinking and reactive emotion. But true mastery emerges when you learn to conduct from the deepest register of your identity. Here, creation is not about hoping or requesting, but about commanding. The principle of identity command represents a quantum leap in spiritual understanding. It transforms you from a passive recipient of circumstances to an active architect of reality. Your presence becomes a decree, your stance a fundamental law that reshapes the very fabric of your experience. This is not about magical thinking or positive affirmations. This is a sacred discipline of spiritual sovereignty, a precise art of aligning your core identity with the fundamental laws that govern manifestation. You are preparing to transcend the limitations that have held you back, to step into a realm of creation where outcomes materialize with unprecedented clarity and speed. The journey ahead will strip away the illusions of powerlessness, revealing the extraordinary potential that resides within your innermost self. You stand at the threshold of understanding how identity, not thought, not emotion, becomes the ultimate catalyst of transformation. Part 1. Awakening to the supra-reality. Chapter 1. The Whisper Above the Law. Eleanor Hart's life had been a continuous negotiation with circumstance. A single mother working 2 jobs, she had grown accustomed to apologizing, not just verbally, but through her entire demeanor. Her energy suggested perpetual compromise, a quiet acceptance that her dreams were luxuries reserved for others. One ordinary Tuesday, something shifted. It wasn't a dramatic moment of revelation, but a subtle internal recalibration. Eleanor stopped explaining her desires. She stopped justifying her ambitions. Instead, she simply began expecting more, not through loud declarations, but through a quiet, unshakable internal stance. Her first interview for a management position felt different. Previously, she would have entered apologetically, her body language communicating uncertainty. This time, she walked in as though the role was already hers. Her qualifications hadn't changed, but her inner tone had transformed. The interview panel noticed something different, not just competence, but a fundamental sense of belonging. Weeks later, when the promotion arrived, Eleanor realized the profound lesson. Attraction wasn't about wanting, but about embodying. She had not changed her circumstances through desperate hoping, but by quietly adopting the identity of a woman who naturally expected advancement. Across town, Walter Briggs drove his city bus with a remarkable consistency that seemed to bend reality around him. Passengers who boarded with agitation mysteriously calmed in his presence. Traffic lights seemed to synchronize with his route. Drivers inexplicably made space for his large vehicle, as though an invisible field of order surrounded him. Walter wasn't performing any conscious magic. He simply operated from a core identity of calm, unshakable certainty. His inner tone communicated that disruption was not an option, that smooth navigation was the natural state of his world. What Eleanor and Walter demonstrated was a fundamental truth. You have been issuing inner commands automatically for years. Most people do this unconsciously, allowing past programming, fear, and inherited limitations to dictate their inner tone. This chapter invites a profound shift to begin issuing these commands consciously. Practice. Identity calibration. Exercise. Find a quiet space. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Imagine yourself not as you currently are, but as the version of yourself who naturally and effortlessly embodies your highest potential. Ask yourself these questions, not as wishful thinking, but as statements of emerging truth. Sit with these questions. Do not rush to answer. Allow your deeper self to respond. Chapter 2. The Two Realms. Clara Mayfield had always been competent, but something fundamental changed when she began to understand the invisible layer beneath external reality. As an office assistant at a mid-sized marketing firm, she typically approached difficult meetings with a defensive posture, her body tight with anticipation of potential conflicts. One morning, before a particularly challenging strategy meeting, Clara closed her eyes in her small cubicle. Instead of preparing arguments or rehearsing defenses, she simply shifted her internal state. She imagined herself as someone who naturally belonged at the center of important conversations, someone whose presence brought clarity and resolution. When she entered the conference room, nothing external had changed. The same colleagues were present, the same potential tensions existed. Yet something was different. Her colleagues seemed to listen more intently. Suggestions that would have previously been challenged now found unexpected receptivity. The meeting flowed with an ease that surprised even Clara. Across town, Samuel Price worked in his auto repair shop, a world seemingly governed by mechanical precision and human unpredictability. He had long struggled with customer disputes and team dynamics, often finding himself at the center of conflicts that seemed to drain his energy. After learning about the principle of supra-reality, Samuel began experimenting with his internal assumptions. Instead of approaching work, expecting confrontation, he started holding an internal state of peaceful resolution. When customers arrived with complaints, he discovered that the conversation's tone shifted before he even spoke a word. One particularly challenging week, a customer arrived with a complex repair dispute. In the past, Samuel would have braced for an argument. This time, he internally assumed complete resolution was not just possible, but inevitable. The customer's energy transformed. What could have been a heated confrontation became a collaborative problem-solving session. The teachings revealed a profound understanding. Reality operates on two interconnected planes. The surface reality, what can be seen, touched, and measured, is constantly shaped by the invisible supra-reality. This deeper realm is not mystical or distant, but an immediate layer of consciousness where true creation occurs. Practice. Supra-reality calibration. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Identify an area of your life experiencing current challenge or friction. Instead of focusing on the external problem, turn your attention inward. Ask yourself, what internal state am I currently broadcasting? What fundamental assumption am I holding about this situation? If I could choose any internal tone, what would transform this experience? Do not attempt to force change. Simply observe the internal shift happening naturally as you hold this new perspective. Remain in this space of quiet observation for several minutes, allowing your inner state to recalibrate. Chapter 3. The architect within Beatrice Lowell had always been a diligent worker, yet her career felt like a perpetual holding pattern. She moved from one mid-level position to another, consistently overlooked for promotions, her potential seemingly trapped behind an invisible barrier. Her internal narrative had been a constant whisper of compromise. "I'm trying my best," she would tell herself, a phrase that simultaneously sounded like effort and resignation. During a pivotal professional development workshop, Beatrice encountered a principle that would fundamentally alter her trajectory. The facilitator spoke about the power of internal declaration, how the words "I am" were not merely descriptive, but generative. They were not just statements, but commands that shaped reality's very fabric. Something shifted inside her. She realized her previous internal declaration of trying implied perpetual struggle, not mastery. With deliberate intention, she began to reframe her identity. "I am a capable woman who belongs at the table," became her new internal soundtrack. The transformation was not immediate, but subtle and profound. Her body language changed. Her communication became more direct. In meetings, she began to speak with a quiet authority that had previously eluded her. Colleagues who had once overlooked her now sought her insights. Across town, Harold Boone's life illustrated a similar principle. A retired veteran struggling with the transition to civilian life, Harold had allowed his identity to be defined by past limitations. Years of military service had left him feeling disconnected, his sense of purpose seemingly discharged along with his military credentials. When Harold encountered teachings about identity reconstruction, he recognized his internal narrative of defeat. He had been unconsciously declaring, "I am a forgotten veteran," a statement that confined his potential. Slowly, intentionally, he began to reshape his internal dialogue. "I am a man of untapped potential," he would tell himself. "I am capable of reinvention." These were not mere affirmations, but fundamental identity recalibrations. Harold began volunteering, pursued additional education, and reconnected with a sense of mission that transcended his military past. The teachings revealed a profound universal mechanism. The I Am operates as the fundamental, blueprinting system of human experience. It was not about positive thinking, but about fundamental identity declaration. Every pattern, every recurring experience could be traced back to the core identity one consistently proclaimed. Practice. I am declaration. Ritual. Find a quiet, private space where you can be fully present. Take 3 deep breaths, allowing your body to settle. On a clean sheet of paper, draw a line down the center. On the left side, write your current unconscious I am statements. These are the unexamined declarations that have been running your life. On the right side, consciously craft new I am statements that represent the identity you choose to embody. Read these statements aloud, feeling the vibrational difference between your old and new declarations. Select the most powerful new declaration and repeat it with full presence, allowing it to resonate through your entire being. Chapter 4. The Laws Above Laws. Josephine Clark stood before her bathroom mirror, surrounded by post-it notes filled with carefully crafted affirmations. I am successful. I am wealthy. I am confident. The words stared back at her, yet nothing changed. Years of positive thinking had yielded minimal results, leaving her frustrated and confused. The truth revealed itself slowly. Josephine's internal identity remained locked in a narrative of limitation. While her lips spoke abundance, her core beliefs whispered scarcity. Her body language, her unconscious reactions, her deepest assumptions, all contradicted the affirmations she desperately wanted to believe. Edwin Mercer understood this principle intimately. As a high school basketball coach, he had watched countless talented players struggle not from lack of skill, but from a fundamental misalignment of identity. Some athletes performed brilliantly in practice, but froze during critical moments, their internal narrative of doubt overriding their physical capabilities. Mercer's breakthrough came when he realized leadership was not about external strategies, but internal command. He stopped trying to motivate his team through techniques and instead focused on helping them shift their core identity. He taught them to see themselves not as players, but as champions, a subtle but profound distinction. The universal laws governing reality emerged with crystal clarity: identity, command, permission, alignment, and embodiment. These were not mere concepts, but fundamental principles that determined what the law of attraction could deliver. Attraction was simply the messenger. These higher laws were the architects of experience. Identity was the blueprint. Command was the directive. Permission created the energetic opening. Alignment ensured congruence. Embodiment made the transformation real. Josephine's transformation began when she stopped performing affirmations and started interrogating her core identity. Who was she at the deepest level? What unconscious beliefs were running her life? The work was not about adding something new, but removing the barriers that prevented her true potential. Practice. The identity excavation. Ritual. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed. Take a journal and answer these questions with absolute honesty. Write without judgment. Observe the patterns that emerge. Breathe deeply and recognize that these are not facts, but choices you can rewrite. Chapter 5. The Field of Command. In the bustling corridors of Mercy General Hospital, Lillian Oakes moved with a quiet confidence that seemed to precede her. Her patients noticed something different about her approach. It wasn't just her medical expertise, but something more intangible. When she entered a room, anxiety would visibly dissipate, and healing seemed to accelerate. Victor Hale understood this principle from a different perspective. His small business had teetered on the brink of collapse for years, not because of market conditions or lack of skill, but because of the fear that radiated from his very being. He had spent countless nights worrying, strategizing, fighting against potential failure, and in doing so, had unknowingly invited exactly what he feared most. The universal principle became clear. The field, that invisible realm of potential and possibility, did not respond to words, strategies, or even desperate intentions. It responded to identity. It mirrored the internal state, the unspoken frequency of being that existed beneath conscious thought. For Lillian, this manifested in her nursing practice. She discovered that patients responded more profoundly to her inner state of calm assurance than to any specific medical instructions. When she internally embodied healing, not as something she was trying to achieve, but as a fundamental truth of her existence, patients began to heal more quickly, complications reduced, and her reputation grew Victor's transformation was equally profound. He stopped trying to manipulate external circumstances and instead shifted his internal narrative. He began to see himself not as a struggling entrepreneur, constantly fighting against failure, but as a successful business leader who naturally attracted opportunity. The field responded immediately. Opportunities began to emerge. Connections that had previously been closed suddenly opened. Clients who had been hesitant now sought him out. The change wasn't in his tactics, but in his fundamental identity. Practice. The identity alignment ritual. Find a quiet, undisturbed space where you can sit comfortably. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Visualize yourself embodying the identity you truly desire, not as a future possibility, but as a present reality. For the next 5 minutes, breathe into this identity. Feel its texture, its certainty, its absolute presence. Ask yourself these questions. What does this identity feel like in my body? What assumptions does this identity naturally hold? How does this identity move through the world? Write your insights without judgment. Record the subtle shifts you experience. Chapter 6. Hidden Contracts and Unseen Permissions. In the quiet suburbs of Maple Grove, Marjorie Wicks lived a life of carefully managed restraint. Her childhood echoed with her mother's repeated warnings. Money changes people. Wanting more makes you greedy. These words had been etched into her consciousness like a permanent inscription, creating an invisible barrier around her potential. Russell Boyd understood this phenomenon intimately. As a long-time social worker, he had dedicated his life to serving others, believing that personal desires were a form of selfishness. His world was defined by sacrifice, by putting everyone else's needs before his own, a narrative he had inherited from generations of family martyrs. Marjorie's professional life as a high school counselor reflected her unconscious limitations. She was brilliant, compassionate, yet perpetually struggling financially. Despite her advanced degrees and exceptional skills, she never negotiated for raises, never sought opportunities for advancement. Her inner contract whispered constantly, "Wanting more is wrong. Being comfortable is enough." This unseen vow acted like an energetic ceiling, restricting not just her financial abundance, but her entire life's potential. Every time an opportunity approached, her deeply ingrained beliefs would subtly redirect or diminish it. Promotions would mysteriously pass her by. Potential partnerships would dissolve before materializing. Russell's journey mirrored a similar pattern. Years of caretaking had taught him that personal desires were a form of betrayal to his family, to his clients, to the very concept of service. He moved through life like a ghost, giving endlessly while his own needs remained perpetually unmet. The breakthrough came when both discovered the profound truth. Inner permissions determine outer possibilities. These unconscious contracts, inherited, learned, or self-imposed, functioned as energetic gatekeepers, silently dictating the boundaries of one's life experience. For Marjorie, acknowledging this pattern meant confronting generations of scarcity messaging. For Russell, it meant understanding that self-denial was not virtue, but a form of spiritual bankruptcy. Their transformations began not with grand gestures, but with quiet internal recognitions. They started to understand that abundance was not a zero-sum game, that wanting more did not make them less compassionate, less worthy, or less spiritual. Practice. The inherited contract. Release ritual. Find a quiet, private space where you won't be disturbed. Take a journal and write down every inherited belief about money, success, and personal worth that you've unconsciously carried. Beside each belief, write its opposite. the empowering narrative that represents true possibility. Close your eyes and visualize these limiting contracts dissolving, transforming into light. Place your hand on your heart and speak these words. I release all inherited limitations. I am worthy of abundance, success, and profound personal fulfillment. Take 3 deep breaths, feeling each exhale as a release of old constraints. Chapter 7. The Ladder of Identity. Frances Miller understood the subtle art of professional transformation long before her colleagues recognized her strategic brilliance. Her career trajectory wasn't defined by traditional networking or aggressive ambition, but by her internal recalibration of self-perception. At each professional crossroads, Frances would silently upgrade her identity. When others saw her as a mid-level manager, she internally occupied the space of a strategic leader. Her quiet confidence wasn't performative. It was a deep, unshakable knowing that radiated through her actions, decisions, and presence. Her colleagues observed her systematic rise with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. She didn't chase promotions. Promotions seemed to chase her. Each time she shifted her internal identity, external circumstances realigned with remarkable precision. Norman Tate represented the inverse narrative, a cautionary tale of identity descent. Once a confident sales director known for his charismatic leadership, Norman had slowly permitted self-doubt to erode his professional standing. With each hesitation, each moment of uncertainty, he descended the rungs of his own internal ladder. His sales performance declined. His team's respect wavered. Opportunities that once seemed abundant became scarce. Norman's external world was a perfect reflection of his diminishing internal authority. The critical moment arrived when Norman recognized the mechanism of his own decline. He wasn't a victim of external circumstances, but of his internal narrative. The moment he decided to reclaim his professional identity, to climb back up the rungs with intentional confidence, his circumstances transformed instantaneously. The teachings revealed a profound universal principle. Results don't emerge from dreams, desires, or even hard work. They manifest precisely from the rung of identity one occupies. Each level of identity carries its own energetic frequency, its own permissions, its own gravitational pull of possibilities. Frances and Norman exemplified opposite ends of this principle. They demonstrated that identity is not a fixed state, but a dynamic, malleable construct. One could ascend or descend these rungs through conscious choice, through the quiet internal declaration of, "Who am I being right now?" The identity ladder. Practice. Close your eyes and visualize a ladder representing your current life domains. Career, relationships, personal growth, finances. On each rung, write the identity you currently occupy. Now, consciously choose the identity one rung higher in each domain. For each higher identity, write 3 actions that person would naturally take. Select one action from each domain and commit to executing it this week. Each evening, reflect, who am I being? And is this identity serving my highest potential? Chapter 8. The Gate of the Spoken Decree. Inez Robbins had always used self-deprecating humor as a shield, a way to deflect potential criticism by beating others to the punch. Her jokes were a carefully constructed armor, masking deep insecurities with rapid-fire wit that left her colleagues laughing, and her internal sense of worth constantly diminished. During a team meeting at her marketing firm, Inez caught herself mid-sentence. She was about to make a joke about her own competence, a reflexive pattern she had perfected over years. But something profound stopped her. The words hung in her throat, unspoken. The The silence that followed was more powerful than any quip she might have delivered. Her colleagues looked at her differently. Something had shifted in her energy, a quiet confidence that hadn't existed moments before. Leonard Briggs understood this mechanism intimately. A high school guidance counselor, he had spent years inadvertently programming his own limitations through casual self-talk. "I'm just not good enough. I'll never get that promotion. Things never work out for me." These were not just phrases, but declarations that constructed the boundaries of his reality. The day Leonard decided to stop speaking against himself was the day his world began to transform. Each time a negative thought approached his lips, he would pause, recognize it, and replace it with a neutral or positive statement. It wasn't about false positivity, but about precise, intentional language. The teachings revealed a profound truth. Speech is not merely communication, but a binding force that seals identity. Every word is a decree, a command that the universe interprets as an instruction. When individuals speak, they are not describing their reality. They are actively constructing it. Words carry vibrational frequencies that resonate beyond their immediate sound. They are energetic signatures that communicate to the deeper layers of consciousness, signaling what is permissible, possible, and expected. For Inez, this meant recognizing that her self-deprecating humor was more than just a defense mechanism. It was a continuous spell she was casting upon her own potential, limiting her own expansion through carefully crafted linguistic patterns. Leonard's transformation demonstrated that changing one's speech was not about positive thinking, but about removing the unconscious limitations embedded in casual conversation. The speech of sovereignty practice. Observe your speech patterns for one full day. Count how many times you speak against yourself. Notice the precise language you use that undermines your potential. For each negative statement, create a neutral or empowering alternative. Choose 3 statements you will deliberately reframe. Speak these new statements with clear, intentional energy. At the end of each day, reflect, what identity am I declaring through my words? Record your insights and notice how your external reality begins to respond to your new linguistic landscape. Chapter 9. The Currency of Attention. Sarah Collier's world felt like a constant storm of chaos. Her days at the call center blended into an endless stream of complaints, frustrated customers, and her own mounting anxiety. Each ring of the phone seemed to amplify her stress, drawing more negativity into her already overwhelmed existence. One particularly challenging afternoon, something shifted. During a brief moment between calls, Sarah noticed a pattern in her thoughts. She realized that every complaint she internalized, every negative interaction she ruminated on, seemed to multiply and attract more of the same experiences. Marshall Keene understood this principle intimately. A former insurance adjuster who had hit rock bottom, he had learned the hard way how attention functioned as the primary currency of reality. Where most people saw their focus as passive, Marshall discovered it was an active force of creation. The teachings revealed a profound universal mechanism. Attention was not merely a mental activity, but a powerful, energetic investment. Whatever received sustained focus would inevitably expand, grow, and manifest more prominently in one's lived experience. For Sarah, this meant her constant dwelling on workplace frustrations was actually generating more frustrating scenarios. Each moment she spent mentally rehearsing her difficulties was like watering weeds in the garden of her experience. Marshall's transformation came when he consciously redirected his attention. After losing his job and facing significant personal challenges, He made a deliberate choice to fund his thoughts with possibility rather than fear. Instead of obsessing over what was going wrong, he began to explore what could go right. The super-reality responded instantly to this shift. Marshall noticed opportunities appearing where before he saw only obstacles. His attention became a precise instrument of creation, carefully selecting which experiences would be granted energy and potential. Sarah started to experiment. During challenging customer calls, she practiced maintaining an internal state of calm. Instead of absorbing the caller's frustration, she learned to observe it without internalizing. Her attention became a selective tool, choosing where to invest its powerful currency. The universal principle emerged with crystal clarity. Attention was not a passive experience, but an active investment. Every moment of focus was a transaction in the marketplace of reality, purchasing more of whatever received sustained awareness. Attention practice. Take a blank journal and divide a page into 2 columns. In the left column, list everything you've been giving attention to that creates stress or negativity. In the right column, deliberately list alternative focus, points that represent growth, possibility, and expansion. For 1 week, consciously redirect your attention from the left column to the right. Notice how your external reality begins to shift in response to your attentional investments. Record your observations and insights daily. Chapter 10. The Ethics of Command. Irene Sutton had always believed her intuitive abilities were a personal playground. A successful corporate consultant with an uncanny ability to read people, she initially saw her spiritual sensitivity as a tool for personal advancement. Her insights became weapons of manipulation, carefully crafted to secure contracts, influence decisions, and bend situations to her will. At first, her strategy seemed flawless. Clients would inexplicably agree to her proposals. Negotiations would turn in her favor, with minimal effort. Irene felt invincible, believing she had mastered some secret art of influence. But the universe operates on principles far more nuanced than human calculation. Slowly, imperceptibly, Irene began to notice subtle disruptions. Opportunities that once flowed effortlessly started to constrict. Relationships that seemed solid began to fracture. Her inner landscape grew increasingly turbulent, though she couldn't immediately connect the dots. Clarence Dorr understood this principle intimately. A former military strategist turned spiritual consultant, he had learned the hard way that spiritual authority was not a personal weapon, but a sacred trust. His own journey had been marked by a profound transformation, from using his insights for tactical advantage to serving a higher purpose. The teachings revealed a fundamental truth. Spiritual influence was not a personal possession, but a responsibility. True power emerged not from manipulation, but from alignment with universal principles of integrity and service. Each attempt to misuse spiritual sensitivity created an energetic backlash, a subtle but inexorable correction mechanism. Clarence's transformation came when he recognized that his abilities were not meant for personal gain, but for genuine contribution. His military training had taught him tactical manipulation. His spiritual awakening taught him true strategic wisdom. Power, he learned, was not about control, but about harmonization. For Irene, the lesson came through a series of increasingly uncomfortable experiences. Contracts that once materialized effortlessly now required exhausting negotiations. Relationships that had been manipulatively maintained began to dissolve. Her inner landscape became a battlefield of conflicting energies. The universal principle emerged with stark clarity. Spiritual authority demanded pure intention. Every attempt to use intuitive abilities for personal manipulation created an immediate energetic counter-response. The universe did not judge. It simply restored balance. Spiritual authority practice. Take a quiet moment of reflection. Draw 3 concentric circles on a piece of paper. In the center circle, write down any spiritual gifts or intuitive abilities you possess. In the middle circle, honestly list how you have used these abilities. In the outer circle, describe how these abilities could serve a purpose beyond your personal agenda. Sit in meditation and contemplate the following questions. Write your insights without judgment, focusing on genuine self-discovery and alignment. Part 2. Deepening the Protocol of Command. Chapter 11. Entering the Commanding State. Evelyn Hartman stared at the stack of overdue bills spread across her kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly. The weight of financial pressure had become a constant companion, whispering dark narratives of impending failure and desperation. For months, she had wrestled with mounting debt, each attempt to resolve her situation seemingly pushing her deeper into a spiral of anxiety. Something shifted in that moment. It wasn't a thought or a strategy, but a fundamental realignment of her internal landscape. Evelyn's shoulders squared, her breath deepened. The trembling ceased. Arthur Lorne had witnessed this phenomenon countless times in his work as a transformation coach. He understood that true command was not about force, but about a profound inner stillness that radiated a different frequency entirely. It was less about doing and more about being, a subtle yet immensely powerful state of inner authority. The teachings revealed that the commanding state was not an external performance, but an internal throne. It was a place of unwavering certainty that existed beyond emotional turbulence. When one occupied this space, the external world began to recalibrate almost instantaneously. For Evelyn, the transformation was both subtle and dramatic. Within days of her internal shift, unexpected opportunities emerged. A consulting project she had long forgotten about suddenly materialized. A distant relative reached out with a generous loan offer. Small synchronicities began accumulating, each one chipping away at her financial constraints. Arthur had seen this principle manifest repeatedly. Individuals who learned to embody a state of calm authority didn't fight their circumstances. They transcended them. The key was not emotional intensity, but a profound inner stillness that communicated absolute certainty. The universe, the teachings explained, responded not to desperate prayers or frantic actions, but to the quiet, unshakable frequency of someone who had already claimed their desired reality. Command was not something to be achieved. It was a state to be inhabited. Commanding state practice. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed. Sit comfortably with your spine straight. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Imagine a throne within your inner landscape. This is not a physical throne, but an energetic space of absolute authority. Slowly breathe into this space. Ask yourself, what would it feel like to be completely sovereign in this moment? Do not analyze. Simply feel. Breathe into the sensation of inner authority. Notice any shifts in your body, your breathing, your internal state. Remain in this space for 5 to 10 minutes. When complete, open your eyes and document any insights or sensations that emerge during the practice. Chapter 12. Rewriting your cosmic contract. Henrietta Vale had always felt a persistent undercurrent of struggle, as if an invisible weight pressed against her every attempt to move forward. Her professional life seemed perpetually stuck. Promising opportunities would appear, only to dissolve at the last moment. Promotions would slip through her fingers, relationships would unravel, and financial stability remained frustratingly out of reach. During a quiet moment of reflection, a memory surfaced from her childhood. Her father, a hard-working factory worker who had experienced multiple layoffs, would often say, "Life is about surviving, not thriving. Don't expect too much, or you'll only be disappointed." Those words, spoken years ago, had become an unconscious vow, a silent contract that governed her entire existence. Raymond Holt recognized this pattern immediately. As a veteran transformation coach, he had witnessed countless individuals trapped by inherited narratives of limitation. These unconscious contracts acted like invisible chains, constraining potential and dictating outcomes before they could even fully form. The teachings revealed a profound truth. Every individual carried unseen agreements, contracts made in moments of pain, fear, or misunderstanding. These contracts became self-fulfilling prophecies, creating invisible boundaries that restricted one's reality. They were not mere thoughts, but deeply embedded energetic agreements that shaped experiences at their core. For Henrietta, the breakthrough came when she consciously acknowledged and challenged her inherited narrative of scarcity. She realized her father's words were not a universal truth, but a response born from his own limited experiences. By recognizing this, she began to loosen the grip of the unconscious contract. Raymond guided her through a process of contract dissolution. It wasn't about fighting the old narrative, but understanding it, releasing its emotional charge, and consciously installing a new permission structure. The key was to approach this not as a battle, but as a compassionate recalibration of one's internal operating system. As Henrietta worked through her inherited limitations, something remarkable happened. Professional opportunities that had previously seemed just out of reach began to materialize. A long-desired promotion emerged unexpectedly. Networking connections that had been dormant suddenly became active and supportive. Raymond had seen this transformation countless times. When individuals broke their loyalty to suffering and installed new permissions, the external world would swiftly realign to match their new internal landscape. Contract dissolution practice. Find a quiet, comfortable space where you won't be interrupted. Take 3 deep breaths to center yourself. Close your eyes and visualize an internal contract book. Identify a specific unconscious vow or limiting belief. Imagine yourself reading this contract aloud. Acknowledge its origin and the protection it once provided. Consciously and lovingly release this contract. Visualize tearing the page or burning the document. Replace it with a new agreement of empowerment and possibility. Breathe deeply, feeling the shift in your energy. Write down the new contract in your journal. Chapter 13. Reordering Timelines. The concept of multiple timelines had always been more than theoretical for Charlotte Ames. A quantum research analyst with an inexplicable sensitivity to potential realities, she experienced what scientists might call timeline bleed-through, momentary glimpses of alternate paths her life could take. Emmett Rowe, a seasoned timeline navigation expert, understood these phenomena intimately. He had spent decades studying the intricate ways consciousness intersects with potential realities, observing how human identity acts as the primary quantum switch, determining which potential future collapses into lived experience. Charlotte's experiences were not random. Each glimpse represented a potential timeline, vibrating at a specific frequency, waiting for her conscious engagement to determine its manifestation. These weren't mere daydreams or fantasies, but actual quantum potentials that responded to her internal state of being. During one particularly vivid episode, Charlotte saw herself in 3 distinct futures: a corporate executive, a wilderness researcher, and a community education director. The variations weren't just career paths. They represented completely different energetic signatures, each emerging from a different core identity. Emmett explained that timelines were not fixed destinations, but fluid potentials constantly reshaping themselves based on an individual's internal frequency. The quantum realm responded not to wishful thinking, but to a profound, embodied sense of identity. Your chosen identity is the quantum selector, Emmett would tell his students. Whatever future you believe yourself capable of experiencing will systematically eliminate competing potentials and draw the matching timeline toward you. Charlotte's research confirmed this. Her quantum sensitivity allowed her to observe how subtle shifts in self-perception could dramatically alter the potential futures available to her. It wasn't about controlling external circumstances, but about calibrating her internal state to match the desired timeline. Timeline selection practice. Find a quiet, centered space where you can be fully present. Close your eyes and take 3 deep, intentional breaths. Visualize multiple potential futures floating before you. Feel into each potential timeline's unique, energetic signature. Identify the timeline that resonates most authentically with your deepest self. Withdraw your belief and energy from unwanted potential futures. Fully occupy the identity of the self, who already inhabits your chosen timeline. Breathe this identity into your current moment. Feel the quantum shift as competing potentials dissolve. Open your eyes, knowing you have selected your preferred future. Chapter 14. From Request to Command. Lucille. Bram's hands trembled as they clasped together, her whispered prayers a desperate litany of request and pleading. Years of religious conditioning had taught her that prayer was a form of spiritual begging, a way to negotiate with a distant, potentially disinterested divine presence. Her voice quavered with each utterance, revealing the underlying current of fear and uncertainty. In the quiet of her modest living room, surrounded by faded photographs and worn furniture, Lucille began to sense a profound shift. Something her spiritual mentors had never taught her was becoming blindingly clear. True prayer was not an act of supplication, but a declaration of spiritual authority. Frederick Cole, a former military chaplain who had studied metaphysical principles for decades, often spoke about the transformative power of prayer as command. He understood that most people approached prayer from a position of weakness, not strength. Prayer, in its most potent form, was an expression of identity, a resonant statement of existing truth rather than a hopeful request. The distinction was subtle but revolutionary. Where Lucille had been asking, she needed to be declaring. Where she had been begging, she needed to be affirming. Her prayers were currently constructed from a self-concept of lack, limitation, and uncertainty. Frederick recalled his own transformation. During his years of military service, he had learned that true leadership was about expectation, not negotiation. The same principle applied to spiritual command. When one speaks from a place of absolute certainty, the universe responds with matching precision. Lucille's breakthrough came not through dramatic revelation, but through a quiet internal recognition. Her prayers were a mirror of her deepest beliefs about herself. Each trembling request revealed her fundamental assumption of powerlessness. The teachings were clear. Command arises from self-concept, not from technique, not from ritual, but from the fundamental identity one holds about their place in the cosmic order. As Lucille began to reconstruct her understanding, she realized her prayers needed to emerge from a completely different internal landscape, one of inherent authority, of divine birthright, of unshakable connection to a greater intelligence. Prayer practice. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Recognize that you are not a beggar, but a co-creator. Speak your desires as statements of existing reality. Use the language of I am, and it is done. Feel the internal shift from request to declaration. Breathe into the certainty of your spiritual authority. Release all attachment to the outcome. Know that your command is already answered. Open your eyes, embodying your new understanding. Chapter 15. Symbol Signs and Sacred Images. The lantern appeared again in Agnes Whitlock's dream, its golden light cutting through the darkness with surgical precision. Unlike ordinary dreams, this vision carried a weight of significance that transcended mere nighttime imagery. Each time the lantern materialized, it brought with it a sense of profound guidance, a symbolic messenger from the super-reality. Bernard Clay understood something most people missed about symbols. They were not mere decorative representations, but active conduits of intention. As a retired graphic designer who had spent decades studying sacred geometry and symbolic communication, he recognized symbols as living languages that spoke directly to the deeper layers of consciousness. Agnes had first noticed the lantern during a particularly challenging period in her life. It would appear unexpectedly, sometimes flickering at the edge of her vision, other times burning brightly in her dreams, with an intensity that demanded attention. Each appearance coincided with critical moments of decision, as if the symbol itself carried a message beyond words. The teachings revealed that symbols operated as sophisticated communication networks within the super-reality. They were not passive images, but active carriers of command, capable of transmitting complex instructions that bypassed rational thought. Where words could be misinterpreted, symbols spoke a universal language, understood at the deepest levels of consciousness. Bernard had developed his own practice of symbolic command during his years of metaphysical research. He would carefully select a symbol that resonated with his specific intention, then use it as a focal point for directing energy and purpose. The symbol became more than a representation. It transformed into an active agent of manifestation. For Agnes, the lantern represented something more personal. Its recurring presence suggested a form of inner guidance, a symbolic companion that illuminated paths previously hidden from her conscious understanding. Each time it appeared, she felt a subtle recalibration of her internal compass. The lantern's significance went beyond mere visual representation. It carried an energetic signature, a vibrational blueprint that communicated directly with the quantum field of possibility. Bernard would have described it as the intention carrier, a symbolic vessel capable of transporting complex directives across dimensional boundaries. Symbolic command practice. Select a symbol that deeply resonates with your core intention. Create a clear, precise representation of this symbol. Meditate with the symbol, allowing its essence to merge with your consciousness. Visualize the symbol as a living carrier of your specific intention. Hold the symbol in your mind's eye, feeling its vibrational frequency. Breathe deeply, allowing the symbol to encode your desired outcome. Release the symbol into the supra-reality, knowing it will activate its purpose. Trust in the symbol's ability to communicate beyond rational understanding. Remain open to how the symbol might manifest its guidance. Chapter 16. Transmuting Emotional Currents. Margaret Flynn stood at the window of her modest apartment, watching rain streak across the glass. Her hands, usually trembling with anxiety, remained steady. Something fundamental had shifted in her understanding of emotional energy. Years of corporate stress had taught Margaret that emotions were obstacles, unpredictable interruptions to be suppressed or controlled. But the new teachings presented a radical alternative. Emotions were not weaknesses, but powerful energetic resources waiting to be redirected. Owen Burke understood this principle intimately. As a former military strategist, he had learned to transform raw emotional intensity into laser-focused action. Fear, which most people viewed as a debilitating force, became for Owen a high-octane fuel for strategic thinking. The practice of emotional transmutation was not about eliminating emotions, but about consciously channeling their underlying energy. Margaret discovered that anxiety contained within it a potent kernel of alertness and preparedness. Instead of fighting the sensation, she began to listen to its core message. Owen demonstrated this principle through his own journey. During military operations, he recognized that fear carried critical information, heightened awareness, potential risk assessment, an instinctive call to heightened readiness. By refusing to be paralyzed and instead converting that energy into focused attention, he transformed a potentially debilitating emotion into a strategic advantage. Margaret started practicing deliberate emotional alchemy. When anxiety arose, she would pause, breathe deeply, and ask, "What essential information is this emotion trying to communicate?" Rather than pushing the feeling away, she would extract its core message, then consciously redirect its energy. The teachings revealed a profound truth. Emotions were not random psychological events, but intelligent communication systems. They carried vibrational messages from deeper layers of consciousness, offering guidance and insight when approached with awareness. Owen's method involved a precise internal protocol. He would acknowledge the emotion without judgment, extract its core intelligence, and then consciously transmute its energetic signature into purposeful action. Fear became focus. Uncertainty transformed into strategic preparation. For Margaret, this meant turning her chronic anxiety about professional performance into a refined, calm assessment of potential challenges. The emotion no longer controlled her. She had learned to be its master. Emotional transmutation practice. Recognize the emotion without resistance. Breathe deeply and create internal space. Ask, what is the core message? Extract the essential information. Consciously redirect the emotional energy. Transform the feeling into purposeful action. Integrate the insight with calm authority. Margaret understood now that emotions were not her enemies, but raw materials for crafting a more intentional reality. They were not obstacles to overcome, but powerful energetic resources waiting to be understood and directed. Chapter 17. The Power of Paradox and Surrender. Eleanor Price sat in her office, surrounded by the remnants of years of relentless striving. Stacks of rejected proposals, meticulously crafted plans, and countless networking emails testified to her desperate pursuit of professional recognition. For years, she had pushed, manipulated, and forced her way forward, believing that success was a battle, to be won through sheer determination. The opportunity she had chased for nearly a decade came not through her calculated efforts, but in a moment of complete surrender. It was as if the universe had been waiting for her to stop fighting, to release her grip on how things should happen. Henry Dalton understood this principle intimately. A seasoned entrepreneur who had learned the hard way, he discovered that true power resided not in forceful action, but in a paradoxical state of relaxed expectation. His most significant business breakthroughs occurred when he stopped trying to control every outcome and instead aligned with a deeper flow. The teachings revealed a counterintuitive truth. Surrender was not weakness, but a sophisticated form of high command. It was an advanced spiritual technology that contradicted everything Eleanor had been taught about success. Surrender didn't mean giving up. It meant releasing the desperate energy of attachment and trusting a more intelligent system of manifestation. Eleanor recalled her years of intense pursuit. Each proposal, each networking event, each calculated move had been driven by an underlying fear of not being enough. Her determination was actually a mask for deep insecurity, a constant pushing against the very opportunities she desired. When she finally let go, not out of defeat, but out of a profound inner peace, everything changed. The long-desired opportunity arrived not as a result of her striving, but as a natural consequence of her internal shift. It came effortlessly, almost casually, as if it had been waiting for her to stop blocking its arrival. Henry's experiences mirrored this principle. He had learned that force created resistance. The more he pushed, the more the universe seemed to push back. But when he learned to release, to trust, to allow, remarkable opportunities began to flow to him with surprising ease. The interpretation was clear. The higher laws of reality operated through paradox. Gain came through releasing. Strength emerged from vulnerability. Control was achieved through surrender. These were not mere philosophical concepts, but practical spiritual technologies. Surrender. Practice. The practice was not about passivity, but about a sophisticated form of spiritual alignment. It required courage, trust, and a willingness to step beyond the limited perspective of the personal self. Chapter 18. Doubt Backlash and Interference. The moment Edith Monroe stepped into her new level of identity, the universe seemed to erupt in a symphony of chaos. Everything that could potentially destabilize her did exactly that. Her longtime clients suddenly cancelled contracts, her support network appeared to fragment, and unexpected challenges bombarded her from every conceivable direction. Where others might have interpreted these events as failure, the deeper teachings revealed a profound truth. Intense backlash was actually confirmation of significant energetic movement. Each disruption represented the old reality desperately attempting to maintain its existing structure, while her new identity attempted to take root. Clyde Harmon understood this principle intimately. When he had first upgraded his professional identity, similar turbulence had threatened to overwhelm him. Unexpected legal complications, sudden financial pressures, and seemingly random obstacles had emerged, testing his commitment to his new self-perception. The key, he discovered, was not to fight the chaos but to maintain an unwavering internal stability. Resilience wasn't about external resistance, but about maintaining a calm, persistent inner state. Each challenge became an opportunity to embody the new identity more deeply, rather than a signal to retreat. Edith observed her own response carefully. Instead of panicking or reverting to her previous limited self-concept, she began to view each disruption as a necessary recalibration. The universe was not punishing her. It was reshaping her external circumstances to match her internal upgrade. Her resilience became a form of command. By refusing to be destabilized, by maintaining her core frequency, despite external turbulence, she was actively participating in her own transformation. The challenges were not obstacles, but the very mechanism through which her new reality was being constructed. Resilience practice. When facing transformational backlash, practice the following sequence. The practice was not about suppressing emotion, but about maintaining an internal throne of calm authority. Each moment of challenge became an opportunity to deepen one's commitment to the new identity, transforming potential defeat into a powerful affirmation of growth. Clyde's experience had taught him that true resilience was not about never falling, but about how quickly one could return to their core frequency. The moment of challenge was precisely the moment of greatest potential transformation. Chapter 19. Collective Fields and Group Command. Helen Barber stood at the family reunion, watching the familiar patterns unfold with newfound clarity. Generations of inherited limitations played out like a well-rehearsed script. Hushed conversations about financial struggles, silent agreements about mediocrity, and unspoken narratives of limitation that seemed to bind every family member. For the first time, Helen saw beyond the surface. The family wasn't just sharing memories or genetic traits. They were trapped in a collective emotional field, a shared vibrational frequency that dictated their possibilities. Each member unconsciously maintained the group's unwritten rules, perpetuating a reality of constrained potential. Wallace Hume had experienced a similar awakening in his own familial ecosystem. A third-generation factory worker from a lineage of modest means, he recognized how deeply ingrained narratives could shape entire generational experiences. His ancestors had unconsciously agreed to a limited view of success, passing down a blueprint of survival rather than thriving. The teachings revealed a profound mechanism of collective programming. Families, communities, and social groups created invisible contracts, energetic agreements that defined acceptable levels of achievement, emotional expression, and personal possibility. These fields acted like invisible membranes, subtly constraining individual potential while maintaining a sense of belonging. Helen observed her relatives through this new lens. Uncle Robert's perpetual financial stress, her mother's resigned acceptance of circumstances, her siblings' hesitant career choices, all were manifestations of a shared vibrational agreement. The family field operated like an unseen gravitational force, pulling each member back to a predetermined level of existence. Wallace's journey had shown that exit was possible, but not through external rebellion. The key was an internal identity shift, so profound that it naturally dissolved the existing energetic agreement. By changing his internal frequency, he had effectively rewrote his familial narrative, creating space for a new possibility. The interpretation was clear. Group fields were not immutable laws, but consensual realities. An individual could step outside these collective narratives by fundamentally changing their inner stance, their sense of self, and their relationship to possibility. Collective field exit practice. Identify the inherited narrative. Recognize the unspoken agreements within your family or group field. Energetic disidentification. Internally declare, I am not bound by these inherited limitations. New identity installation. Consciously choose and embody an identity beyond the group's current frequency. Compassionate detachment. Release the field without judgment, understanding it as an unconscious agreement. Vibrational recalibration. Maintain your new identity consistently, allowing natural separation from the old field. Silent transmission. Embody your new reality without forcing change on others. Continued alignment. Regularly recommit to your expanded identity and possibility. The practice was not about rejection, but about conscious evolution, creating space for individual and collective transformation through personal sovereignty. Chapter 20. Wealth, Power, and Purity of Intent. Sylvia Crane stood at the edge of her modest kitchen, staring out the window at the carefully manicured garden. Her hands, calloused from years of practical work, trembled slightly as she confronted a lifetime of complex relationships with money and worth. Abundance had always felt like something meant for other people. Successful entrepreneurs, wealthy investors, anyone but her. The internal narrative that had governed her life emerged with stark clarity. Raised in a household where financial struggle was worn like a badge of honor, Sylvia had internalized a deep-seated belief that wanting more was somehow selfish. Her parents had spoken of money in hushed, apologetic tones, creating an invisible barrier between her and true prosperity. Douglas Hartley represented a different approach entirely. A community development consultant, he understood that wealth was not about accumulation, but alignment. His prosperity flowed from a sense of purpose that transcended personal gain. Where others saw financial success as a personal trophy, Douglas viewed it as a tool for broader transformation. The teachings revealed a profound truth. Abundance was not an external resource to be chased, but an internal state to be cultivated. Power didn't corrupt. It expanded through integrity. Wealth wasn't about taking, but about creating value that resonated beyond personal boundaries. Sylvia's discomfort with receiving became her greatest teacher. She began to see how her resistance wasn't humility, but a form of self-sabotage. Every time an opportunity emerged, she would unconsciously shrink, believing she didn't deserve more. Her identity had become a closed circuit, preventing the natural flow of resources. Douglas's approach demonstrated another way. His projects generated wealth not through manipulation, but through genuine solution creation. He understood that true prosperity emerged from serving a larger vision. Each initiative he launched created ripple effects that transformed communities, with financial abundance as a natural consequence of meaningful work. The interpretation crystallized. Wealth was an extension of identity. Not the identity of scarcity or struggle, but one of contribution, possibility, and genuine service. Money wasn't separate from spiritual growth. It was a reflection of one's internal alignment. Abundance. Alignment practice. Identify current money story. Trace. The unconscious beliefs about wealth inherited from family and environment. Purpose. Alignment. Connect financial goals with a broader vision of contribution. Integrity. Calibration. Assess current actions and ensure they align with deeper values. Receiving permission practice. Internal declarations that allow abundance without guilt. Value. Generation. Develop skills and perspectives that create genuine value for others. Energetic attunement. Meditate on wealth as a neutral energy of potential and flow. Consistent embodiment. Maintain an identity of resourcefulness and possibility. Sylvia's journey of confronting her abundance blocks had begun. Douglas watched, understanding that true prosperity was never about the money itself, but the consciousness from which it emerged. Part 3. Mastery of the Forbidden. 33rd Degree Reality. Chapter 21. Living as a law knot under one. Eleanor Finch stood at the edge of transformation, her professional life a testament to the power of internal recalibration. As a mid-level marketing strategist, she had long believed success was about external strategies and relentless effort. Now, she understood something more profound. Mastery emerged not from doing, but from being. The morning Ralph Mercer first noticed her shift was unremarkable. They were colleagues at a regional advertising firm, both navigating the complex landscape of client relationships and corporate expectations. Where Eleanor had previously approached challenges with a mixture of anxiety and overcompensation, she now moved with a quiet, unshakable certainty. Her transformation wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Her presentations carried a different energy. Her proposals landed with precision. Obstacles that once seemed insurmountable now dissolved almost before they could fully form. Ralph observed this metamorphosis with a combination of curiosity and respect. The teachings revealed a fundamental truth. True mastery was not about studying principles, but living them. Eleanor wasn't just learning about command. She was becoming command itself. Her identity had shifted from someone trying to prove her worth to someone who inherently understood her value. Ralph watched as her entire professional ecosystem began to realign. Clients who once challenged her proposals now sought her insights. Colleagues who previously overlooked her contributions now requested her collaboration. She hadn't changed her tactics. She had changed her fundamental relationship with herself. In team meetings, Eleanor no longer argued or defended. She simply spoke from a place of absolute clarity. Her words carried weight, not because they were louder, but because they emerged from a deeper source of knowing. She had become the principle she once merely discussed. The interpretation was clear. Command became effortless when identity became law. Eleanor wasn't working harder. She was operating from a completely different frequency. Her external results were now a direct reflection of her internal state. Ralph Mercer understood this principle intimately. He had observed how becoming the cause, rather than constantly reacting, transformed one's entire experience. Obstacles weren't something to fight. They were invitations to embody a more powerful state of being. Embodiment practice, identity resonance meditation, inner command calibration. Eleanor continued her quiet revolution, not through force, but through complete integration of her chosen identity. Chapter 22. Multi-layered manifestation. Georgina Blake stared out the window of her downtown loft, wrestling with a persistent pattern of near misses in her creative career. As a graphic designer with considerable talent, she had watched countless opportunities slip through her fingers, always seeming just beyond her grasp. The teachings about multidimensional coherence began to crystallize in her understanding. It wasn't enough to want success, or even to believe in her capabilities. Every layer of her being, emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical, needed to align in a singular, harmonious command. Harrison Lowell, a business mentor she had recently connected with, shared his own journey of transformation. He described how his previous attempts at success had been undermined by internal contradictions. His emotional landscape would broadcast doubt, even when his conscious mind declared intention. Manifestation in the supra-reality, Harrison explained, isn't a linear process. It's a holistic experience where every aspect of your being must communicate the same message. Georgina realized her emotions were constantly sabotaging her professional aspirations. While she spoke confidently about her design skills, beneath the surface, deep-seated insecurities whispered narratives of inadequacy. Her inner emotional landscape was sending conflicting signals to the universal field. She began to observe her internal state more carefully. When preparing portfolio presentations, her intellectual ambition would surge, but her emotional body would simultaneously radiate uncertainty. These misalignments created energetic interference, preventing her desired outcomes from manifesting. Harrison guided her through a process of internal calibration. She learned to synchronize her emotional responses with her professional identity, creating a unified field of intention. This wasn't about suppressing emotions, but about harmonizing them with her core desires. As Georgina practiced this multidimensional alignment, subtle shifts began occurring. Clients started responding differently. Design opportunities emerged more naturally. Her work seemed to attract attention without the desperate hustling she had previously employed. The interpretation was clear. Manifestation in the supra-reality demanded complete internal coherence. Every layer of being, conscious and subconscious, must speak with one voice. Multi-dimensional alignment practice. Chapter 23. collapsing time and accelerating outcomes. Doris Klein stood at the threshold of her modest accounting firm, her fingers tracing the edge of a manila folder containing a proposal that had languished for months. Something fundamental was shifting within her, a realization that her own expectation of bureaucratic delay was the very mechanism creating those delays. The teachings whispered a profound truth. Time was not an external force acting upon her, but a malleable substance responsive to her internal state of being. Each moment she had previously spent anticipating obstacles, she had unconsciously been constructing those very barriers. Eugene Marx, a colleague who had mentored her through several professional transitions, observed her transformation with quiet understanding. He had long ago discovered that timeline acceleration emerged not from frantic action, but from a crystalline clarity of purpose and an unwavering internal certainty. Doris began to notice subtle changes. Paperwork that typically took weeks now moved with surprising fluidity. Conversations that once felt like navigating bureaucratic labyrinths now unfolded with unexpected directness. Her internal landscape had recalibrated, and the external world was responding in kind. The interpretation revealed a fundamental principle. Timeline acceleration was not about working harder or pushing more aggressively, but about embodying a state of complete certainty. When one's identity fully occupies the space of accomplished resolution, time itself seems to bend and compress. Eugene shared a pivotal insight. Your relationship with time is a reflection of your internal agreements. When you stop negotiating with delay and start living from a place of immediate manifestation, the external world recalibrates. Doris internalized this wisdom. She wasn't trying to manipulate time. She was simply removing the internal blocks that had been artificially stretching her experience of temporal progression. Timeline acceleration practice, certainty, calibration, ritual, Chapter 24. The silent command of stillness. In the soft morning light of her suburban kitchen, Lydia Moore observed an unusual phenomenon. Where she once would have scrambled and strategized, pushing against resistance, she now found herself cultivating a different approach. A quiet, almost imperceptible confidence that seemed to rearrange circumstances without apparent effort. Her professional life had long been a landscape of constant struggle. As a mid-level project manager in a competitive tech firm, Lydia had previously believed that success demanded constant movement, aggressive networking, and relentless pushing. But something had shifted in her understanding of power and influence. Carlton Reeves, her mentor and senior executive, had introduced her to a counterintuitive principle. True authority resided not in noise, but in stillness. During their last mentoring session, he had demonstrated this by recounting how his most significant professional breakthroughs occurred not through elaborate presentations or forceful arguments, but through carefully calibrated moments of calm presence. Lydia began experimenting with this approach. In team meetings, instead of frantically presenting her ideas or defending her perspectives, she started listening deeply. Her responses became measured, her energy centered. Colleagues who once overlooked her now found themselves drawn to her measured insights. Her projects started moving with an unexpected fluidity. Obstacles that would have previously required weeks of negotiation now dissolved almost spontaneously. Clients responded to her proposals with unprecedented openness, and her team's productivity increased without additional pressure. The teachings revealed a profound insight. Stillness was not passive, but a concentrated form of authority. It was a signal of mastery, a demonstration that one was so internally aligned that external circumstances became malleable. Carlton observed her transformation with quiet satisfaction. He recognized in Lydia the same principle he had learned decades ago, that true power emanates from an unshakable internal state, not from external manipulation. The interpretation crystallized a fundamental truth. Stillness signals mastery. It communicates a depth of understanding and confidence that goes beyond words or actions. When one embodies this state, the world responds with a natural deference. Stillness calibration. Practice. Authority embodiment meditation. Chapter 25. Miracles as your new normal. In the quiet suburb of Millbrook, Mabel Green's life had become a testament to a profound shift in perception. Where she once marveled at unexpected positive occurrences, she now approached them with a calm expectancy that bordered on the supernatural. Stanley Rhodes, a retired physics professor who had become a student of these higher laws, watched Mabel's transformation with professional fascination. He had witnessed countless individuals struggle to bridge the gap between hoping for miracles and expecting them. But Mabel embodied a different approach entirely. Her morning routine exemplified this new understanding. Where she previously would have seen a chance parking spot near a crowded building as luck, she now recognized it as a natural extension of her internal alignment. Synchronicities began stacking up with such regularity that what once seemed extraordinary became her new normal. The teachings revealed a critical distinction. Miracles were not random events, but natural expressions of identity command. Mabel had learned to occupy a state of being where alignment was her default setting. Her internal landscape had transformed from a place of uncertainty to a field of absolute expectation. Stanley observed how her professional and personal life reflected this shift. Opportunities appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Professional connections materialized without forced networking. Challenges resolved themselves with an elegance that defied conventional explanation. In the 33rd degree reality, miracles were not exceptional occurrences, but ordinary expressions of a refined consciousness. Mabel embodied this principle, moving through her world with a quiet confidence that suggested she was no longer surprised by the universe's responsiveness. Her conversations reflected this new understanding. Instead of expressing shock at positive developments, she spoke of them as expected outcomes. Her energy communicated a fundamental truth, that alignment was not something to be achieved, but a state to be inhabited. Miracle alignment practice. Synchronicity. Attunement ritual. Chapter 26. Initiations and the Guardian at the Gate. Iris Montgomery stood at the threshold of transformation, her world suddenly bristling with unexpected resistance. The carefully constructed reality she had been cultivating seemed to tremble at the edges, testing the integrity of her newly claimed identity. The first challenge arrived like a precision-targeted disruption. A project she had been nurturing for months began to unravel, funding mysteriously delayed, key team members expressing sudden doubt, external circumstances appearing to conspire against her vision. Where once she might have interpreted these as signs of failure, her newfound understanding revealed a different narrative. Milton Gray watched her journey with the knowing eye of someone who had traversed similar terrain. He understood that these were not obstacles, but calibration mechanisms, the universe's way of testing the strength of her internal command. The teachings whispered a profound truth. Challenges were not impediments, but validations. Each seemingly insurmountable barrier was actually a confirmation of her energetic ascension. The more profound the shift in consciousness, the more intense the initial resistance would appear. Iris noticed how her old self would have collapsed under such pressure. Previously, she would have interpreted these challenges as signs that she was on the wrong path. Now, she recognized them as initiatory trials, a sacred process of tempting her to retreat, while simultaneously offering her an opportunity to embody her new identity more deeply. Her response became her most powerful strategy. Instead of fighting the challenges, she held steady. Her internal state remained unbroken, her sense of self unshaken. Each moment of potential breakdown became a moment of breakthrough. Milton observed her transformation with quiet admiration. He recognized the subtle alchemy occurring, how challenges were not just being endured, but alchemized into fuel for her continued evolution. The universe, it seemed, was not conspiring against her, but conspiring with her. Each test was a doorway, each obstacle an invitation to demonstrate the depth of her newfound understanding. Initiation, challenge. Integration, practice. Identity, stabilization. Ritual, sit in a quiet, centered space. Close your eyes and take 3 grounding breaths. Visualize the current challenges surrounding you. Feel into your core identity, unshakable and steady. Mentally declare, these challenges confirm my ascension. Breathe deeply, feeling your inner stability. Sense how the challenges are actually proving your growth. Remain in this state of calm certainty for 5-7 minutes. Slowly open your eyes, integrated and resolute. Chapter 27. Commanding with others, not over them. Abigail Drew stood at the crossroads of her professional journey, a seasoned executive who had long believed that leadership meant control. Her previous approach to management had been tactical, strategic, often manipulative, driven by a desire to achieve results at any cost. The revelation came quietly, almost imperceptibly. During a critical project meeting, Jonathan Wells demonstrated a radically different approach to leadership. Where Abigail would have previously maneuvered and orchestrated behind the scenes, Jonathan created a space of genuine collaboration. His leadership emerged not from dominance, but from a profound understanding of collective potential. The teachings unfolded like a delicate map of spiritual influence. True command, they revealed, was not about bending others to one's will, but about creating resonance. It was an art of alignment, where individual intentions harmonized with a greater collective purpose. Jonathan's method fascinated Abigail. He didn't seek to control outcomes, but to create conditions where team members could access their highest potential. His leadership was an invitation rather than a mandate, a subtle form of energetic guidance that allowed each team member to contribute from their most authentic space. She observed how his approach generated exponentially more creative energy than her previous command and control strategies. Team members didn't just comply, they were inspired. Their contributions came from a place of genuine commitment rather than fear or obligation. The interpretation crystallized a profound truth. Genuine command amplifies collective potential. It's not about individual dominance, but about creating a field of mutual empowerment. When individuals align with a shared vision, their combined energy becomes a transformative force, far more powerful than any singular manipulation could achieve. Abigail recognized that her old paradigm of leadership had been fundamentally limited. She had been trying to control outcomes, whereas true mastery was about creating the conditions for emergence. Divine collaboration practice. Group alignment meditation. Chapter 28. Legacy protocol. Esther Lane stood in her kitchen, watching her children move through their morning routine. Something had shifted, not just in her, but in the very atmosphere of their home. Years of generational patterns of anxiety, self-doubt, and limitation were dissolving, replaced by a quiet, almost imperceptible strength. Her youngest, Michael, approached her with a confidence that seemed to defy his 12 years. Her daughter Rebecca carried herself with a grace that spoke of an inner knowing far beyond her teenage experiences. Esther realized her own inner work was not just a personal journey, but a transformative force that rippled through her entire family lineage. Reginald Pierce, a family therapist who had guided Esther through her spiritual awakening, often spoke about the invisible threads that connected generations. "Your healing," he would say, "is not just about you. It's about breaking cycles that have been passed down through generations." The teachings revealed a profound truth. Identity was not confined to an individual's lifetime. Each internal shift, each moment of conscious realignment, sent waves through the family's collective energy field. Esther's work of releasing inherited beliefs, confronting generational trauma, and reclaiming her personal power was creating a new template for her children. She remembered the stories her grandmother had shared, tales of struggle, limitation, and silent endurance. Those narratives had been woven into the family's emotional DNA. But now, something different was emerging. Her children were inheriting not a legacy of survival, but a blueprint of empowerment. Reginald shared stories of families he had worked with, where one individual's transformation became a catalyst for collective healing. Some called it epigenetic healing, others spiritual inheritance. Whatever the name, the mechanism was clear. Consciousness could be transmitted beyond the immediate self. The interpretation was both humbling and empowering. Command was not just about personal achievement, but about leaving a spiritual legacy that could transform entire lineages. Each internal shift was a gift not just to oneself, but to those who would come after. Generational healing ritual, family legacy, transmission practice. Chapter 29. The Inner Supra-Temple. The morning light filtered through the study's wide windows, casting a soft glow on Florence Avery's contemplative face. Years of external searching had led her to this moment of profound internal discovery. The realization that true command originated not from outside forces, but from a carefully cultivated inner sanctuary. Wallace Dean sat across from her, his weathered hands resting quietly on an ancient wooden table. He understood the art of inner architecture better than most, the delicate process of constructing an internal command chamber, where intentions were refined, purified, and activated before being released into the world. "Your inner sanctuary," Wallace explained, "is more than a metaphorical space. It's a precise energetic environment where your highest self orchestrates reality. Each thought, each intention, passes through a series of refinement chambers before manifesting." Florence noticed how Wallace moved with a deliberate calm, as though every external action was preceded by an intricate internal choreography. His movements suggested a deep attunement to something beyond the physical, a connection to what some might call intuition, but what he described as a meticulously maintained supra-temple. The teachings revealed that this inner sanctuary was not a passive space, but an active command center. Here, raw intentions were examined, transformed, and aligned with one's highest purpose. It was a place of profound discernment, where unconscious patterns could be observed, challenged, and ultimately dissolved. Wallace described the inner sanctuary as having multiple chambers: a reception area where intentions first arrived, a refinement hall where they were examined and purified, and a transmission room where they were encoded with precise energetic signatures before being released into the world. "Most people," he said quietly, "broadcast their intentions without filtration. They wonder why their manifestations feel scattered, why their desires seem to dissipate upon contact with reality. The The secret lies in this internal architecture. Florence began to understand that her inner sanctuary was not something to be created, but something to be discovered, a pre-existing space of clarity that had always been within her, waiting to be recognized and activated. Inner Sanctuary Construction Practice. Chapter 30. The 33rd Degree. Virginia Crowe stood at the threshold of transformation, her entire being vibrating with a newfound understanding that transcended mere knowledge. The teachings of the 33rd degree reality were not about acquiring something external, but about becoming a living embodiment of command. Benedict Shaw watched her, recognizing the subtle shift happening within her. The 33rd degree was not a destination to be reached, but a state of being to be inhabited. It was a profound understanding that true mastery existed in the moment of complete inner alignment, where one's identity became the very law of manifestation. Virginia's breath deepened. She understood now that this was not about controlling external circumstances, but about becoming so fundamentally aligned with her core essence that reality would naturally conform to her inner state. The boundary between intention and manifestation began to dissolve. Benedict spoke softly. The 33rd degree is not a title or an achievement. It is a living, breathing state of command, where your very presence becomes a decree. Virginia closed her eyes, feeling the layers of her previous identities falling away. Each limiting belief, each inherited narrative, each unconscious contract began to disintegrate. What remained was a pure, crystalline essence of her truest self, unbound, unlimited, and intrinsically powerful. The teachings revealed that mastery was not about doing more, but about being more completely. It was about collapsing the distance between who you believed yourself to be and who you truly were at your core. Benedict observed the transformation, recognizing the profound shift happening within Virginia. Her energy field was recalibrating, her internal systems realigning with a more fundamental truth of existence. Sealing Identity Protocol. Sit in complete stillness. Close your eyes and take 3 deep, centering breaths. Place your hand over your heart. Speak the following decree out loud. I am now fully aligned with my highest self. I release all previous limitations. My identity is a living command. I am the law of my own existence. What I am being, I am creating. I am complete, sovereign, and fully empowered. Remain in silence for 5 minutes. Feel the vibration of these words moving through every cell of your body. Allow the declaration to seal itself into your being. When you are ready, open your eyes. You are now integrated. Conclusion. Virginia Crowe stood at the window of her modest apartment, her gaze extending beyond the physical landscape into the unseen realm of potential. The teachings of the 33rd degree reality had transformed her understanding of existence from a series of external events to an intimate dance of inner command. Benedict Shaw observed her silently, recognizing the profound shift that had occurred within her consciousness. The journey of supra-reality mastery was not a destination to be reached, but a continuous unfolding of alignment and awareness. Her transformation was not about acquiring power, but about becoming so fundamentally integrated with her truest essence that reality would naturally respond to her inner state. Each breath became a subtle decree, each moment an opportunity to inhabit her chosen identity with unwavering clarity. The room seemed to vibrate with a different frequency, the frequency of pure potential. Virginia understood now that command was not about force or manipulation, but about a deep, resonant alignment with one's intrinsic nature. The boundaries between intention and manifestation had become gossamer thin, almost imperceptible. Benedict knew that her journey, like all profound spiritual transformations, was both deeply personal and universally significant. The 33rd degree was not a static achievement, but a living, breathing state of being. It required continuous devotion, moment-by-moment recommitment to the identity one chose to embody. Virginia's hands, once tentative, now moved with a quiet certainty. Her movements spoke of an inner authority that needed no external validation. She had become the living embodiment of the principle she had learned. That identity itself was the most profound law of creation. The teachings whispered through her consciousness. Each moment offered a new opportunity to issue reality-shaping commands. Not through struggle or effort, but through the pure, unfiltered presence of her truest self. Her authority was no longer something to be claimed, but something she simply was. Benedict watched as Virginia integrated the final layers of understanding. The 33rd degree was not about achieving something external, but about becoming so completely aligned with one's essence that the very concept of separation dissolved. Her journey had taught her that true command was an act of profound surrender, a paradoxical state where letting go became the most powerful form of creation. She had learned to walk forward with the quiet confidence of one who understands that her presence itself was a decree. The room seemed to breathe with her, the invisible field of potential responding to her newfound clarity. Virginia Crowe had become more than a student of super-reality. She had become its living expression.
If you enjoyed this exclusive audiobook, I handpicked this next book which will change your life.